Lemon Amiga presents a Playguide video review. Sit back and enjoy the show.
Hey there, welcome to another Lemon Amiga Play Guide and Review. This time we'll be checking out Moonstone, A Hard Day's Night. This was developed by Rob Anderson and published by Mindscape in 1991. The game begins with an animated introduction where we get to see what look like druids turning up at Stonehenge, and this Stonehenge will be, I think, the aim of the game. Once we get Stonehenge, then we get to unlock the end of game boss. And this is where our quest begins, and on the WHD load version it actually comes with a number of documents to help us. One of those are the joystick controls, and you can see various manoeuvres are on offer. And it also gives us as well the phases of the moon and also the rules for a kind of dice game that we'll be playing a bit later on. And you can see most of that revolves around the same kind of characters, and the moon phase will also aid us or detriment us in the game itself. After the introduction, the main sequence will now load so that we can check out those options, and there are very few options in the game. We can either play as a 1 to 4 players, and all 4 players can be chosen to play this game, some of those on the keyboard and 2 of those using the controllers. For this one I'm going to choose a single player game, and of course I'm going to leave the gore on. So without further ado, we can now select our knight. And now we get to select one of 4 knights. They will spawn in all 4 corners of the map, so I'm going to choose maybe the orange one for this one because he spawns in an opportune place. And finally we get to name ourselves as well. You can see we now spawn in our home village, and if we return back to our home village, that will heal us as well between battles, and that's definitely important to remember. So simply heading into this top corner where we are at the moment is going to be something that I'm probably going to be doing during this playthrough. The important thing at the start of the game is to move to one of the bases that you can see dotted around the map, and they contain enemies. And those enemies will be of various different shapes and sizes and kinds, and as we move through the game hopefully you'll find less and less enemies in those regions, and that's because on this map there will be 3 other opponents, basically the knights that we didn't choose at the beginning of the game. We can also check out our stats as well, and you can see we start out with a measly 10 gold, 20 hit points and 1 of everything else it seems, and our lives are stacked up in the middle. We've got 5 lives, we've also got a number of throwing daggers, we've got a main sword and a suit of armour as well. So that's all we can do at our home village. Let's move on and check out this tower. As you ring the bell at the bottom of the foreboding wizard's tower, a sense of unease rises in the air. A tall, dark figure slowly rises onto the balcony some 50 feet above your head, and with a low, powerful breath the mighty wizard Mahen speaks. The magical forces of nature that bind us all together flow strongly around you. This gift is for you. And our friendly wizard is saying the forces of nature are strong in us, so he's going to give us 31 gold. So the wizard, it's 50-50 what we managed to get from that wizard, and I think you can only visit him once a month or once a week or something like that. And sometimes he'll take money off us and take things off us and give us curses and that kind of thing, but if he likes us and we've done well in battle and we return to him, he'll actually give us some goodies. So at the start of the game, that's why I like to choose the orange knight, and then we can level up straight away. You can see the opponents are already ganging up on us, so let's move to our first base, and the gods pause every time that we need to load this thing up off that disc. Moonstone is not an easy game, and that's our first life lost already. So you can see that we have managed to get some gold, but some of the enemies are pretty difficult unless you understand how to defeat them. So this is going to be a pretty long review. Hopefully we'll find out as we play through it. And if you replay a level, if you manage to get rid of a number of enemies, then that takes away the number who are in that enemy lair, and so if you've only got one left and you go back in there and you destroy it, that should mean that you get the golden chest that you can see behind us, and whatever lays in that chest is basically our reward for defeating those monsters. In Moonstone, most of the enemies can be defeated with a stick and move manoeuvre. That means waiting until the enemy's moved and then lay into them, and hopefully now that only contains one enemy at the beginning of this game, and we've got take Gem of Seeing, and we can also take a Scroll of Acquisition. So we do get a choice. We also get 14 gold as well. Let's add that to our total. And it seems that we can collect everything whilst we're in here. Let's collect the Seeing as well. That simply means that we can check out our enemies and see what they've got. So by pressing any of the columns that exits us from this particular place, and so I think if we've got full constitution, there is a way of getting extra lives in this game. I'm not quite sure, but I think if we can level up, we might even be able to get those back. But you can see early on that enemy base has now been cleared off the map, and we can only move a certain number of places or a certain area around us per day depending on the terrain. And in terrain like mountains, it slows down a great deal. So at the moment I'm heading south towards the swamps, and maybe that's a good idea, maybe it isn't, and after everybody's moved it will then move on to that next day. Arriving now at Waterdeep, I'm going to save up the game because spending all our cash in town is definitely possible, and sometimes we need that cash for something else. So it gives us a nice introduction picture, and from here we can visit a merchant, and he'll furnish us with a lot better swords, and any amount of cash is definitely worth those better swords, and also armour as well. We've taken a few hits, but we will recover our GP or our HP on the road. So we can see battle armour is there ready to buy. We've got padded armour, but I don't think we can sell it in this particular game, which is a bit of a drawback. You would think that the merchant would be able to buy things that we can sell, but unfortunately not. And you can see that armour, well, we could buy the sword at this point, that's only 25 GP, but I'm really looking for the best armour, which is 75, and so it's probably best to save up all our cash for that. One thing you can do is go into the tavern, and you can lay down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 gold to predict the outcome of the 3 dice that are thrown in this game. And you might remember, if you have the manual or the WHD load, it gives you a picture of that, and you'll need, I think it's a red dragon or something else. You need 2 of those red dragons and something else to get a reward. And earlier on in the game you can see that it's not entirely predictable what we're going to get. In fact, 90% of the time we're going to get nothing. This game is based on odds, and if we don't win, that simply increases the chance of us winning on the next turn. So the more we lose, the more chance there is of us winning on the next turn. So what I usually do is level up by clicking on number 2 and then moving up further, moving up, and then as soon as it gets near it looks like I'm gonna win, I put on loads of gold, and when it looks like I'm running out of gold I go back to the minimum bets all over again. So you can see I'm speeding up this footage. We're down to 19, and now what we're going to go for is 16 because we run out of cash, and just look at that, we've won, so that puts us up to 46. And if we'd have betted 5 gold there, which is what I should have done, we'd have got something for it. Let's go back down again. We're now down to 43, and you have won 30. So now we have 70, which is almost enough for that suit of armour. This is precisely the point where I would exit this thing because it's completely random. But let's just go through it again to show you. And you've lost 2, so of course after you've just won something that lowers the odds of you winning again. But if you've won something, you might actually get another win straight away, or almost straight away. That's called a winning streak. And again, this game is completely at random. This is absolutely 100% random and complete chaos. But that's how chaos works. Sometimes you'll have a winning streak, and out of nothing becomes order. You've just won, I think that says 8. So that puts us up to 69. That's only 1 less than we had when we started. So if you are betting wise and you've got a feel for when the good things are coming up, and you've got loads of bets on, that puts up to 70 again. It is possible to actually win some cash in this game, but you can see I've now betted everything that I've got, betting, and so sometimes if luck is against us, we'll win nothing. Loading up again from that save state, let's check out the healer. And in here, of course, we can buy a number of things to help us, and again we can heal ourselves on the road. As long as we don't fight anybody, we'll slowly heal up. So we've still got the 55 that I walked in here with, and you have to give him a donation. Anything more than 10 is usually good for the healing, and he'll give you an amount of healing based on the cash that you've given him. And so maybe 20 if you want to get tons of healing, 30 if you want to top up to the top. And so let's check out this. You can get new skills and abilities if you donate to this guy. So let's do that. Let's put some cash into his hands, and well, I'm thinking actually because we've only got 55, it's probably best to save that. Sorry, I can't help. But he will either give you things or he will actually take things away again. and so sometimes dealing with that kind of guy is not helpful in this game. But at the very start of it, when you can reload it and you can save state it and things like that, it's good to start off well and level up and avoid all the other enemies at this point, because one of the ways to beat the game is to simply let the enemies clear out all of those enemy hives for us. And scroll of acquisition, why am I using that? But if I did use that, basically you can check out all the other knights. Sir Balain, I think it says, and he's got nothing. Sir Gunther, he's got 1 potion, and Sir Gawain, not Gawain, unfortunately doesn't have anything. So of course you can see the scroll of acquisition, using that early in the game is pretty useless, but look at that, he's got 30 odd gold. Let's get that. That gives us 88, and so that's why I've used the scroll. The more the enemy knights take on those enemy lairs and get that enemy cash, we can now rob it off them, and now using that cash we can now get the best equipment. I think this is the best armour in the game, 75, that gives us 13 gold left. And do we spend the other on something else? Well, we could have actually used the gem of seeing to check out all of those other enemies, but again it's best to leave all those to the end game. And I think that's about it. So we've now, by luck or by judgment, by being gifted money, by earning it and also getting some money in the town, we've now got ourselves the best armour hopefully in the game, or at least the second best. And you can see now that we can check out our stats at any point. We've got 1 XP because we've taken out 1 enemy lair, and everything else is on 1. If we have more constitution, that will mean the hit points go up, and you can see the hit points are on 50 now because we've got that armour. So 20 to 50 really does make a difference, and you can even get boosters to things like that during the game itself. Beware of the rat men. During the full moon they grow stronger, and as the moon gets fuller, so if you're facing rat men and you're facing full moon, unfortunately you're going to have a difficult time. Another great thing about this game is as soon as you hit the enemy, a spurt of blood will come out. If the enemy hits you, then blood will land on the floor. And sometimes if you've taken out loads of enemies, then there'll be tons of blood and gore everywhere, and maybe piles of enemies piled up. And I think these are supposed to be trolls or orcs or something like that. Whatever, they're meant to be green, but they are blue on this game, so these kind of cave troll things only have 1 club. It's pretty weak, and as long as you stick and move like this, it's pretty easy to get rid of them. Sometimes it's best to clear away the easiest enemies at the very start of the game, because the aim of the game is to collect 4 hidden keys, and collecting all 4 means you can unlock, I think it's Stonehenge in the middle. You'll then get the best armour and the best weapon, the best sword, and then you'll face the end of game boss. So you can let the enemy knights collect the keys for us if you really want to do that, and that's probably the easiest option. Sit back and let the game beat itself. Look at that, when we start flashing like that, that means that we're almost about to die, and if we do die by taking another hit, that will wipe a life out. If we don't die, often we can heal ourselves up and save that life. But yep, collecting those 4 keys by letting the enemies do it for us and simply sitting back in this game is a great thing to do, so you don't have to go through it all gung-ho. And if the enemies clear out a fortress or a hive or something like that, it will make it easier for us. You can see I managed to launch 1 dagger at the enemy. Let's collect that money again. Perhaps that's the most valuable in the game. We can also heal ourselves as well, and a spell of protection. I think that maybe gives us even more hit points. and we're down to 8 at the moment out of 50, so it's a good job we leveled up as we learn to defeat these enemies. After a number of days the dragon will appear, and I think after the first week, and that means the dragon, if it lands on our square, then sometimes it will attack us, and the longer the dragon is floating around in the game, the more money it will accumulate, I think. So if you leave that late on, you'll get tons of cash for defeating the dragon. But if we are weak at the start of the game, there is pretty much no chance, or little chance, that we'll defeat it. And so at complete random, it can be more or less game over if you bump into that dragon. So you can see it's on our flight path at the moment. Sometimes it's best to run away and then back to Waterdeep, and then obviously we can hang around and do other things and waste our turn. That should mean that we accumulate some health as well. We're back up to 19 hit points, and so do we get, well, we've got 40 at the moment. That means that's terrific. We can now get a better sword. So we've got the best sword that the game can offer us at the moment, and we've got a nice health and HP upgrade as well. Are we going to get some more skills? Well, we've got 15. Let's put 10 in there, and well, let's give him 10 at least, and let's see what he gives us. And the Cosmos has granted you more Constitution. Fantastic. So now let's exit that and let's check that out. Let's see what that's actually given us. And you can see after every turn everybody will move. And so it's the next day. Let's just run away from that enemy for now, and hopefully the enemy's going the slow way, and hopefully we can avoid that dragon as well. You can see we are now 60 hit points, and we were up to 43 by keeping our nose clean a little bit and tramping around these swamps. I want to get out of the swamps and return to the easy enemies if possible, and you can see I'm now being attacked by another one of the Black Knights. Sir Richard may use the Scroll of Protection to avoid the encounter, and that's what the Scroll of Protection does. It means that we can avoid the encounter with the Black Knight, and I really want to do that at the moment. But guess what? Another knight is now attacking us, and now we've got no choice but to face it. Luckily, the Black Knights, or the enemy knights in this game, are, as far as I'm concerned, the easiest enemy in the game. And the usual stick and move, whilst the enemy is waiting to attack, is the best thing to do. That will mean that we get a free dib of his pockets, and I think we can only collect one item, but because gold is at a premium and everything else is pretty weak, we can even steal his swords as well, although I'm not quite sure they can steal a life. But let's grab that cash, and definitely leaving the black enemies until the end of the game is great, because they've got tons of cash to steal, tons of scrolls as well, but more importantly the keys that we need to get into the centre of that map. At the moment I'm avoiding the area, not that we can do much anyway, and I think the henge you can see at the bottom corner actually gives us some health and maybe some extra constitution or whatever. If we do well, the druids will reward us, and again I don't think you can milk that out. I think you can only return to that maybe once a week, so beware of the fierce Ballocs. At the start of the game, when you are pretty weak, you might only get one of those at a time, and as we level up later on it might throw two towards us, and I think some of these bases might even get stronger the longer you leave them alone in the game. So definitely some of these things can attack us now in twos, and things that only attacked in ones earlier on. You can see I'm running out of energy here, so you can see, well, I think I pressed the pause key there. I'm going to have to get used to, unfortunately, killing these enemies, and that means taking them on one at a time and hopefully stick and move. Now we're down to 3 lives, but we get full constitution back, and what I normally do at this point is attack the very same base again, and that means because we've defeated it already, it should be pretty weak by now, and I'm completely and utterly ignoring that because I don't know how many enemies are in there, and it could be quite a few. So you can see now we've entered somewhere else. It's a completely different location, and these pig-like monsters or whatever they are, they're like unicorn dogs or something. They will only attack us one at a time if you enter this particular lair early in the game. By now they're now attacking us 2 at a time, and that just makes the whole job a lot harder. So if you're struggling with these guys, definitely attack them early. And hopefully as soon as they enter the screen, if you give them the swipe, you can hit them, and they always enter along the same level as we are after they've run off the screen. So if we stay here, then the next one like that will get us, but you know, if we're ready for that, we can hit it. And that looks like we've lost another life. So maybe that's the Ballox that we was talking about earlier on, but you can see now that we are struggling at this point, so this game does give us the opportunity to take it easy by visiting different places, Highwood in this case, and we can also take on the easier layers, so we don't have to go for the hard ones at this point. So the merchant, what have we got? 19 cash, and he's got all of the same stuff as the other merchant in the other city. And in the tavern, I'm presuming is the same gambling game, but there is a different one here, another kind of merchant. He'll give us talismans which helps get rid of the dragon, and I think that protects us against the dragon, a ring of protection that we definitely need, and scroll of the hawk, I can't remember what that does, scroll of acquisition to get some stuff, and scroll of the worm, again that's a dragon thing, so if you're using the scroll of the worm, I think that gives you extra hit points or protection against the dragon, and I think that gives you extra 20% protection against the dragon if you get in one of those items. So if you have maybe 5 crosses of the worm, that will give us maybe 100% extra hit points against the dragon, and that means it can hit us a few times. If you don't have them, then the dragon can hit us once and it's a one-shot kill. So sometimes it's worth collecting those collectibles, and sometimes if we are strong enough, we don't need to do that. Now we find spearmen with their pole arms, and they are a little bit more fierce than the axe guys that we saw earlier on, because if we make a mistake they can gang up on us, and there is a kind of retreat move. I think if we pull bottom right, if we're facing this way, it gets us out of trouble. That's kind of a block move, and if the enemies grab us and any of the big monsters, we can get out by using the block move, but that's pretty time consuming and that doesn't always work. It's also great to see the death moves. This came out of course before Mortal Kombat, and this holds the title, the world record of the Guinness World Record of the first ever game with death moves in it, where you could simply chop off people's heads and things like that, but that obviously borrowed from Barbarian, and the combat in this game was actually modelled on Barbarian by Palace Software, and maybe Barbarian 1 actually is the first game ever to contain death moves. At the moment I'm hightailing it back to my hometown. We've done a loop of the level. You can see we've now got 2 lives and 60, and I think you can collect extra lives if you hang around in your hometown. and maybe skip a move, so I'm going to attempt to do that. I think 3 is the maximum that you can have, I'm not quite sure. But if we return home and we are struggling, we can simply top up to 3 at any time. There we go, that's 3 lives now and full health. So we don't really have to die in this game, all we need to do is return home again, and we're being challenged by another knight. That's good news, because the other knights are weak, but it's bad news in a way, because this early, this knight probably doesn't have much on offer. And if you kill all the black knights in the game, I think it respawns new ones with brand new stats, so you really want to weaken them down to the last life and the last energy at this point, and otherwise they'll be happy enough going around to all those enemy layers and weakening the enemies for us, and definitely that's what you want them to do, weaken all those enemy bases for us. And you might notice I hardly ever use the daggers because that's pretty time consuming. This guy's got a ring of protection, let's have that, definitely, and scroll of the worm as well. And I think we can only collect 1 item from the enemies. Once you've collected that, that's your lot. But you can see now we have 80 constitution, fantastic, and 2 constitution hit point, whatever, from upgrading in the towns. So our constitution's really getting up now. I wouldn't really recommend less than 100 if you want to face that dragon. And the dragon is almost attacking us. What do we do? Well, I'm actually returning, I think, back to the village at the moment, trying to avoid that. I'm not quite sure. No, it looks like we've got another enemy encounter from that same enemy again that we left in the village. So it means we're going to have to knock out the same guy again. That's not too much of bad news, because we know what he's got. Maybe that scroll of the worm will come in handy. Otherwise, I'm going to take his cash. This game was developed and coded, and the graphics were created by Rob Anderson, and he also coded The Ultimate Ride for Mindscape in 1990 before this, and that's a pretty difficult game, in fact impossible. And he also created, of course, Techno Cop, which is one where you go around shooting the heads off people and there's blood and gore all over the place. And he also finished working on Fiendish Freddy's Big Top of Fun and Molten Massacre, which is another blood and gore game. So Rob Anderson is on that Lemonade website. The music was created by Richard Joseph, and some of the design, some of the playtesting was Todd Prescott. And Rob Anderson and Todd Prescott grew up near Oakville, Ontario, which is a suburb of Toronto. They began this game in 1988 by sending off some spec designs and a game design off to Mindscape, and they funded it, so actual production began in 1989, and then it took basically 2 years, and at the end of 1990, the beginning of 1991, it was ready. Both guys was at college at the time. One of them was studying a degree and the other one was at art college, and so this is a Canadian game, and so it's NTSC, and it's actually based on the D&D game Talisman and also Dark Tower. And apparently this game Moonstone is virtually identical to the game Dark Tower, so if you find the board game, if you love Moonstone, maybe check it out. As mentioned, the fighting on offer was based on Barbarian by Palace Software, and I think they did a great job with that. and the sound effects were mostly ripped off Red Sonja, so the sound effects are fantastic. Every single scenario has its own background image and its own monsters, and they all do different things and they all have different attack patterns. And so I think this is fantastic, to be honest. This has got tons and tons of things going for it. I think it came on 3 discs, and they said that this game is limited mostly because of the memory on the Amiga. And so it wasn't really the disc swapping, it was basically the memory involved. We're down to our last life, and that means, yet again, we're going to have to rush for the hills, hopefully. And that red dragon is posing a bit of a problem, because it's right up there. Luckily, we're not too far away from our home base, so let's grab a life straight away. And now, let's think about where we want to move to next, which enemy we want to raid. And in this game, there is definitely an easy way to get through it, and we haven't found any of the random keys yet, which open up the centre of the map. Usually the enemies will find them for us, and we can simply use an acquisition spell, which, yes, we can buy them, and we'll also get extra cash every time we defeat and raid one of those enemy layers. So a layer is important to take down, and you can see at the moment I think we have enough constitution to take down the dragon, and it's not easy sometimes to get caught out by the dragon deliberately. And at this point I really should be visiting that tower, because it's been a week since we visited that wizard. It's probably going to give us some good stuff to help us. It really would be a good idea to visit that tower again, because he's our friendly guy. So I'm not quite sure whether we deliberately get caught by the dragon or not on this particular turn, but if we do, then we are probably, well, looks like we're not. But if we do, we're probably going to save the game up again, because I've never successfully defeated that dragon. Yep, now I'm going to save state it up, and we're going to attempt to master to learn how to beat the dragon, the most fearsome enemy in the game. Speeding up this footage, you can see that I had to go through quite a few save states before I got anywhere near mastering the dragon. If the dragon hits us with his flames, then that will usually knock off maybe 40 hit points in one go, or maybe 30, something like that. So if you have over 100 around that, you can usually withstand 3 hits, and that's pretty vital. If you get anywhere near the dragon itself, it will either eat us or fry us, and sometimes it can do other things as well, and sometimes we can get ourselves into a dead end where something simply gets us and we can't get out of it. Like most of the creatures in this game, they are most vulnerable just after their attack, and this dragon has got 2 flame attacks, the near and the far, and you can usually get him to go for the far attack if you hang around on the far of the screen, and as soon as he does that you can usually rush in at the last moment and go for a swipe or a lunge or an overhead swipe, and that's one way to do it. And this is simply one way that I'm trying to do it at the moment. You can do it other ways, and you can get him from the top of the screen, the bottom of the screen. You can get him at any point as long as he isn't firing that dragon flame at that point. Moonstone was actually banned in Germany, of course, because it features violence and blood and gore. It was banned in Germany, and the producers Mindscape themselves voluntarily gave it a 12 rating, even though video game computer ratings didn't exist back in the day. They gave it a 12, like, you know, as if people under 12 weren't going to buy it. But they gave it a 12 rating, and back in those days maybe kids were more respectful, I'm not quite sure. It did cost a heck of a lot of money, and not many 11-year-olds had $25.99. So it did come out in Europe with a limited release, but it didn't actually come out in America because Toys R Us said it was too violent. Which is ironic because Toys R Us made an absolute fortune selling the console version of Mortal Kombat only a short time later, so they completely and utterly changed their mind on that particular fact, and blood and gore and violence suddenly was fine to sell to American youth. But because this game never came out in America and Germany and Africa and China and Singapore and Japan, unfortunately the sales in France and Spain and England weren't enough to make this game good enough for a sequel, and the makers did petition the Mindscape group to have a sequel, Moonstone 2. But Moonstone 2 did not come out because they said Moonstone 1 did not sell enough copies. On the Amiga I'm trying my usual trick, and sometimes you can even get the guy twice and 3 times, 4 times like that on a rebound. If you know exactly what you're doing, you don't even have to wait for him to fire. You can just run around in a circle and you can hit him at the top of the screen, the bottom of the screen, and all which ways. And definitely, hey, if you have the health to spare to take a few knocks at this point, it's great because it means if we do get hit we're not instantly dead. So why to kill the dragon? Why am I bothering to do this? Well, usually the dragon, once it's dead, it's dead. Second of all, it has tons of money so we can buy ourselves out of trouble. And thirdly of all, it's pretty annoying to get caught out by the dragon at the worst of times, usually after you've just encountered an enemy lair. And once you've encountered an enemy lair, you might have maybe 28 points left, and then the dragon will come along when you have 1 life and 28 points and say, right, that's it now, I'm going to gobble you up. And if you have also the ring of the worm, I think it is, and the cross of the worm, whatever it is, you can definitely survive a few more hits. Checking this out with tons and tons of things in there, and the money, let's have a see, sword of sharpness, that's the even better sword. It's not the best sword in the game, but it's even better. Scroll of haste, yep, let's have the acquisition as well, and the protection, and there is no limit, I don't think, to the number of items we can pick up, and they'll simply rack up on the bottom of that screen. So we've now got, we're back up to 80 constitution with 45 gold, 4 XP. Every layer that we knock out will give us the XP. I'm not quite sure whether we get anything for killing that dragon. I'm using the WHD load version at the moment because that one crashes the least, and if you press E on the keyboard you can actually end your turn early. That's a tip from the manual. If you don't want to attack a base because you are resting and you want to get your constitution back, you can simply press the E key, and that means that you can end that move early. So you can see now we can actually build up. If we've maintained our way through the game, it actually gives us the opportunity to use up XP by increasing something. So we've now got 2 strength and 2 stamina, so we've used some of the XP to upgrade our strength, and that should mean that the enemies take less hits from now on. And of course stamina is a really great thing as well. Let's see if our friendly wizard has anything for us at this point, and I've wasted that XP Let's see if the wizard gives us, and bind us together, flow strongly around you, as the wizard math vanishes into whatever he gives you, filled with gold. So it looks like he's given us some cash again. 68 we're now on. And cash at this point is handy for the scrolls of acquisition, because if the enemies get one of those 4 keys, again, we can just steal it off them. And it's disappointing to tackle the enemies at this point, the Black Knights, because as I say, they're the easiest enemy as far as I know in the game. So let's go through it again, let's tackle this guy. And you can even block most of this guy's moves. And I've never known throwing daggers to be useful, unfortunately, in this game, because they just take too long to pull them out and wield them. And so with the strength that we've got at the moment, and this sword, the upgraded sword that we got from the dragon, it means the enemies now only take 2 hits to knock them out. What's this one got though? 10 credits. Scroll through, and we don't need that anymore, but we've picked it up anyway, stupidly. So, well, we've got another one of them. The dragon isn't going to appear anymore, so we're not going to need that. And so that was a bit of a waste of time. And we could also use the scroll of protection. And so we can face the enemy again, not that that's worth doing. And so in the next move I'm probably going to, well, I'm actually going to see what the enemy had in there. They had 2 scrolls, so we're going to face the enemy again, just so I can check out what other scroll they had, because I didn't quite see that during this play. And you can hit the enemy with any move you like at this point. They are absolutely vulnerable. So check out those nice trees in the background, reminding us maybe of Golden Axe. So the longsword, who cares? And life points left, so they're down to 1 life. Let's see what it was. The scroll of haste. That gives us some more movement points on the map. It doesn't really help us much, so what I'm going to do is take that cash. That puts us up there to 78. That means we can buy anything we like, and we've got a few scrolls as well. And look at that, during the next move, guess what? The enemy attacks us again. So we're going to get rid of it, because, well, there's no chance that the enemy is going to get rid of us at this point. So we're going to defeat that enemy, and then we'll see what happens. Maybe that will be wiped from the game, but I think the game simply respawns a different one. Look at that, 1 decent hit with the overhead swipe. That's the enemy defeated. So what has he got that I want? Nothing at this moment. And can I get anything else? No, I can't. He's got extra endurance, which is nice, but I can't actually pick any of those up, and everything else is absolutely useless. So let's unfortunately exit out of this. And now a cross appears. Look at that, a cross now appears on that map. So if we die, or if one of our friendlies die, for example in a 2-player game, the second player can now move across to that location, to that cross, and they can now pick up anything that we've dropped. So if we've dropped 2 of the keys, that means our friend will now be able to collect those, but the enemies can as well. So let's check out another enemy base. This game is all about timing, and if you can observe the correct timing, or the good timing to hit the enemies, it doesn't matter whether they are on the screen or not. If you hit them, then a splash of blood will appear, I think, and that denotes them being hit. And if we killed them, guess what? Another enemy will appear. If they appear from the same side, then that's not too bad. And if we swipe them just in time, I think with a certain amount of long reach, and the overhead sweep manages to hit them, but you can see the normal swipe doesn't quite hit them. So is that the end of it? Only 3 guys? Well, let Loki there. I think the enemies have cleaned that place out for us. They've definitely cleaned out the cache. Protection and the hawk, well, protection, I guess. Definitely can't have too many rings of protection in this game. That puts us up to 100, and because this is a layer, we get to clear it all out anyway, so let's do that. Fantastic. So now we're really leveling up now, and it probably would be a good idea to keep an eye out on our lives and to mosey around our home base, and then if we are at risk of losing lives, we can simply return back there again. So let's see, a healing potion. Let's put ourselves up to 100 again, and that will also take away movement points during this turn, so maybe that's actually wasted this turn. I'm not quite sure. Let's exit, let's find out. And no, we can still move somewhere. What do I want to do? Well, let's check out this layer and seek the knowledge of the mystics of Stonehenge. And it's these pikemen again, whatever they are, and of course they've got a long reach, and that doesn't help, so I'm going to have to learn how to master these guys with long reach, otherwise I'm going to be a sitting duck here. And I think the overhead swipe is probably a lot better, not only because the overhead swipe is twice as powerful as any other swipe in the game, so if you can hit that on target, that's usually a one-hit kill. If you are brave, definitely if you wade into these enemies and get them before they get you, that's one way of doing it. Otherwise you'll just have to time it as best as you can, and as soon as the enemy moves in for a strike is when it is most vulnerable, but that's when it also hits you as well. And if you go into the wrong direction by mistake, pulling that controller in the wrong direction, then you've just wasted a turn, and again trying to get out of the thing with a block isn't helping us at this point. And unfortunately the death sequence seems to have disappeared on this particular playthrough, so now we're down to 2 lives again. So even though we've got 100 hit points, it's still not easy, and I wouldn't say this game is easy at any stage unless you are a master of it, or unless you get coached by a master. And masters obviously make this game look easy. They can march through from layer to layer, find all the keys, acquire all the best stuff from the enemies, march straight to the middle of it, and that's absolutely no problem. But for mortal people like me, or people that haven't played this game, and I never actually got to practice this game before ever back in the day, I basically loaded it up and got killed straight away. So I've never actually sat down like this to actually play it. So that's now us at 120 hit points out of maybe 200 maximum, and we don't need that anymore. Scene, well, it's not bad actually, and I think we're in the shop at the moment, so we're gonna have to buy those things, and maybe even getting our constitution raised as well. Well, there isn't a constitution raiser in that town. We'll have to go back to the swamps again if we want to do that. So what am I actually doing? Let's make that long trip and let's meander down there. By this late stage in the game, if we've got tons and tons of health, then it could mean that there are tons of enemies waiting for us, and that's bad news, particularly if the Black Knights haven't weakened this layer for us. So this is me trying to master this game, and if I don't master it pretty soon, I'm going to get killed. Sadly there is no music in this game, but the sound effects more than make up for it, and of course these graphics with all the blood spurting out and the enemies piling up on that screen, and some of the best Amiga games memorise enemies piled up on that screen. And taking a massive sigh of relief, I've managed to get through that. I can tell you for a fact I was absolutely exhausted after that particular battle. And we haven't even found our first key yet. There's more cash in there. So that gives us some more experience points. We can trade that in for more strength if we really want to do that. And you can see some more enemies trying to take us down. Trying to get back to the village, I think, at this point. There are still tons of enemy layers still to go, and it doesn't help with these stupid, insane enemies trying to take us out. So I'm certainly not going to use the scroll of protection to skip out this battle, even though I could do that, because it's so easy to kill these guys anyway. So I have a lot of respect for this game. I always had respect for it back in the day, even though I never knew how to play it. And taking the teeth out of the dragon, it's actually not so hard, because once you learn how to defeat the hardest enemies in the game, of those I'd say maybe the swamp monster is one of the hardest, and you get used to stick and move, swipe and then run away. That's how you do the dragon, that's how you do these guys. And as soon as you are in a prime position to do something about it, swipe, and that's the enemy's over. So masters of this game say it's way too easy and they can just wade through it like they're wading through a nice summer's day in the park. And for the rest of us, unless we'll know those moves inside out, the perfect way to get rid of every enemy, we're going to have to learn it. And if not, my tip is to sit back and let all these silly enemies take out most of the enemies for us. And that's definitely a good tip. And if you're playing this in 2-player mode, then it becomes easier because you can take it in turns to knock out those bases. And so let's see if this guy will actually dish us out anything. And maybe 20 is good. And has stolen some of your strength. That's terrific. So instead of giving us something, he's actually taking something away. Let's try it again. Sometimes it's complete random again, just like that dice game. And sometimes the more you give, the better it helps. And now he's taken away some more of our constitution. So if we're not careful at this point, the Mystic's going to demolish all of our upgrades for us. And so let's leg it out of there. And at least the healer, I think, gives us something. I can offer us some roots and some tea. Well, I think the healer always helps us, but maybe the Mystic doesn't, and that's definitely disappointing when you've slowly built up your stats. And so there are tons of random elements in this game, absolutely there is, and sometimes you can gamble your way to fortune, and sometimes you can be given level ups right from the start. So you can see we're now level 1 on everything. Let's use up our XP to get us back to level 2 constitution at least. It gives us 120, and by resting between the battles and basically using up a turn travelling, it means that we've now got some health. Unfortunately, the mud monsters in this game, I hate them. And I never actually learned how to beat them. So let's quickly move on to the scores. Amiga Joker gave this the low score at 54%. Amiga Format gave it 59, complaining that it's full of bugs and there's no save feature, and you should avoid this unless you want lots of frustration. That came from Amiga Format. Dato gave this 69, Aecor gave this 70, Amiga Power gave it 73, Thew Amiga gave it 81, The One gave it 82, Lemon Amiga gave it 86, Amiga Computing gave this 89, and Amiga Action awarded this the highest score with 90%. That awards this 7.5 out of 10. Thank you very much, and I'll see you again in another play guide and review sometime soon. Thank you.